Hello, everybody. Welcome to Brace for Impact. Today, for the first episode, we're gonna talk about how to build a remote team that stays healthy, happy, and sane. Very important, especially right now with the COVID-19. I'm Adrien Colombie, the CEO and founder of Flying Saucer Studio, and I'm very happy and proud to be joined by my wife Dominica today to go through the main challenges you may face during this transition. Hi, Dominica.
Hello, Adrian.
Awesome. So what should we start with?
Well, so I know all about you. I know your story, but I think you should give us a little bit of context about how you started working remote. What led you to make the decision to create this agency as a remote agency?
Yeah. Well, it's pretty simple. I mean, I was a freelancer. I also worked full-time in-house for some companies in the States, but when I started to move full-time freelance, I wanted to travel in the same time. I just wanted to be free. I was going a lot in South America, in Europe, in the States, and yeah, I wanted a system. I wanted to create my own set of rules to be able to do the activities I love.
And when was this? What year did you start Flying Saucer?
I was fully freelance. I always been freelancing, right? But 5 years ago, I moved full freelance, and 4 years ago, we were already 3 people. So that was not Flying Saucer, but I was already a team that really quickly turned into a company, which is Flying Saucer today.
Yeah. And when you first started out, do you feel like working remotely came natural to you? Were there things that naturally prepared you for this? I mean, I know with our generation, we grew up talking online on instant messenger and social media and things like that. Do you feel like there were things that came naturally and other things that you had to surprised you or that you had to work on when you first started?
Well, what was natural is the idea. You know, I knew it was possible, and I don't know, for me it was really natural. It didn't feel impossible at all. So that was natural. We had a couple tools. I mean, that was before Slack and everything. You know, it was Google Hangouts, chats, and Skype and emails. And it was pretty obvious it could work. That was taking a lot of emails and back and forth at that time, and a lot of meetings. Especially, we were 2 or 3, so that was fine. But then we had to create new solutions. Every time we had 1 new people in the team, that was generating hundreds of new interaction.
Yeah.
So every time we had to find a new system, a new process, and we keep doing that as we grow. We're over 30 people now, so every time there is a new kind of role, a new system, we update our approach. So that's something we keep doing every day, and that may be a big difference with a regular company that they have a set of rules, a set of process, and maybe it's not evolving as fast as we do because we have to.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you think was the biggest surprise to you when you started working remotely as a growing team?
Well, I think at first I was kind of romanticizing, idolizing the idea of remote work. I think I was kind of, and I think it's a kind of common misconception. Freelancing is different than remote life, right? Freelancing, you can, if you're successful enough, balance your life between being in a place and working, either in a company, either at home, and then traveling, or even maybe traveling a little bit in the same time that you're working. While remote life, a remote company, I mean, we work Monday to Thursday or Friday, and we're not, most of the time we are not traveling in the same time, even though it happens and it's possible, but it's still a company with a certain workload and responsibilities, and you need to be available a certain number of hours per week. So at first I really was thinking about being on the beach, drinking pina colada or working and sending a couple emails and then just spending my day like this. It's not exactly what happened. As you know.
Yeah. At the same time, I know I've heard a lot of friends and family tease you about working remote as if you're not really working. Like, he's not really working. He's out on the mountain on a Tuesday morning. How do you feel like that also has an impact on your clients? Do you feel like there is a bad reputation that goes along with remote work that can affect you and your agency's credibility?
It's, I think, when you create when you create a company, you want to set your own set of rules. There are thousands of clients out there. We are super connected world, especially working remote. We have clients everywhere in the world, so our market is huge. It's unlimited. So it was the temptation at first is you're afraid, so you try to be more broad. So you're thinking being remote as a constraint, and you think that's gonna actually move away clients, but that's good. You want to actually qualify your clients, and if your clients are not thinking it's okay that you're remote and thinking you won't be working with them, but they are not your clients. They are not the right people for you, and it still happens time to time with us. People are telling us, I don't know, a remote company, I'm afraid, and I'm telling them, look, if you're afraid about this, don't work with us. It's okay, it's totally fine, because we need people that they don't even think about it. And most of our clients, which are startups, for them it's never a question, because they do not have offices, or they have kind of WeWork office, so it's not really an office. They don't have time to move to a place, to meet people, to move back, and to bring you in, and we don't have time for that. We just work, do meetings, deliver. So sometimes I meet them, during conferences and in CES or web summits, and that's great. We're happy to connect, and it's not even about work anymore. It's really the human side, but otherwise it's not a problem. So I would say not to be afraid to qualify your clients. You create a company, it's for you, it's your company. Do your thing. That's gonna be what makes the company unique.
Yeah. And do you ever get feedback from clients that they're excited about the fact that you're remote, like the opposite effect, that they're actually impressed?
Yeah, more and more. And today with the COVID-19, it's crazy. People are actually typing remote agencies. They are looking for that as an aspect, because they need some people. They have to do it right now.
Yeah.
They have to work remote. So if they work with an agency who knows to do it, who know how to do that, then it's much easier for them. They can actually as well learn from it.
Yeah. Do you ever find yourself in a situation where you're teaching your clients how to deal with remote life, or how to increase remote capabilities within their own startups, within their own companies?
Yeah, so two things here. First, we actually just released a new service to help people to recruit correctly, to hire correctly in remote, because again, we have been doing that for 4 years now. We created the process and optimized the process that works perfectly. We have 90% of our people stay in the company longer than, since the beginning.
Wow.
They never leave. So that's really good. So that's one thing. The second thing is, yes, right now, because of the context of the virus, we're helping our client first, obviously, but also other clients with some consulting about how to make the move. It's harder to make the move rather than to do it from the beginning, but it's we help them a lot.
So I've been watching Flying Saucer grow over the years, and it is growing incredibly fast. It always has been. What kind of challenges would you say have been coming up with this combination of high growth and remote work, where you're not actually interacting with your other employees face to face every day?
Well, a lot of it is. Right now you can read a ton of articles about best practices and best tools and best tips to work remote. I think all of this is great, but first it's pretty easily solved. So that's something you can do quickly, but that's kind of superficial. There are different topics that you need to focus on with a remote team if you want to make it work on the long term. And that's what you want. You want your team to stay in, you want them to grow, you want them to be efficient on long term. Recruitment is very expensive, so You don't want them to burn out either. So the recurring challenge, and that's something now that is top priority for us on weekly basis, we talk about it, it's mental health. Um, we see that a lot, just kind of labeled differently. People, call it work-life balance. I don't really like this label because it feels like it's two separate things, which is, especially in a remote company, not really relevant. I mean, how it works here. I start the day, I go down in the kitchen, I get a coffee, and then I jump in my office, right? So the work-life balance, it's the line, the limit is much more blurry. So working on the mental health of our employee, it's been top priority, and we define a very concrete set of rules and guidelines to help them for that.
So how does that translate into internal policy for you and your team?
Well, there are a lot of them. It can go from very small details, but they have huge impact. For example, Slack, we have very precise guidelines about how to set it up correctly, especially the notifications, because we've realized that after 2 or 3 months, some people were totally overwhelmed, starting to burn out because of so many notifications all day, because it was all on and they could not focus 2 minutes on anything and actually produce anything, because it was just buzzing all day, every day, right? And they would start the day with 50 notifications, because we have people across 10 different time zones. So it will never stop, right? So it may feel obvious when you've been in the company forever, but when you're just coming in, maybe you're not daring asking, how you should set up the things. So that's, for example, one. But in general, it's about defining boundaries, what is expected from you, how many hours you have to be available online, is it only on the phone, is it actually being in front of your computer, in terms of communication with your team, when you should communicate. And we have this aspect of notification, so that's about the tools, but also we help our people to set up a space to work correctly, to have something dedicated to that. You cannot work from your couch, from your kitchen table. You need a place that you can actually live and it feels like living work. So that's very important. A good chair, how can you feel happy at work if you actually have back pain, So that's small things, but very important to have an environment that feels good and you can grow in there and stay sane, again, happy. So that's one of the things. But overall, it's to have open communication about how much energy you put in the company and how much energy you put in yourself, in your own development, in your own happiness. Lots of people I meet, other entrepreneurs, other CEOs and founders, they tell me they're afraid people are not going to be working enough. We never had this issue. It's the issue we have is people working too much and burning out. So it's all about putting boundaries and having an open conversation about people taking time for themselves, not putting all their energy in the company, in the computer, in the remote life, but having time apart to cook, to spend time with the family, to spend time outside, to travel. And that's been, again, mental health has been our main challenge and main focus on helping people to find that balance, or in between, not life and work, because that's the same thing, but between the energy they put in the company and the energy they put in themselves.
So are there any kind of warning signs that or red flags that you've learned to look for in yourself or in your teammates, or having them, look for in themselves, to kind of see if they're on track with that?
So, again, the open conversation is what helps us to detect this. If you talk with people every week about what's up, in their life and how they feel, that helps. Of course, we can see it in productivity. So we do not track time at all. We do not track, how many hours you're working. What does that mean? You track how many hours you're in front of your screen. Does that mean you're productive? We set up goals together, a project manager and creatives or writer or whatever in the team who is managing you, And if you do not reach the goals, we understand why. We try to understand why. And that's how we detect when there is a problem, right?
Yeah.
And we know right now, we know there are a lot of studies showing that working 40, 45, 50, 70, 80 hours a week, it is not productive. It's not generating better results and more and reaching your goals better. We actually right now making the move to a 4 days week. How do you say?
Work week.
4 days work week.
Mm-hmm.
We are actually right now making the move to a 4 days work week. So yeah, again, open conversation is a key here, and setting up boundaries, talking about the boundaries all the time.
Okay, so we've touched on mental health and the personal effects of working remote on your employees. Do you consider that before you even hire people? Are you already kind of thinking about how somebody's going to be able to handle remote work during the recruitment process?
Yeah. Actually, that's a good question. Recruitment is, with mental health, the top. I think that's the biggest challenge and the biggest priority for CEOs and founders if you have a remote team and a remote company, because it just starts there. Remote work is not for everyone. Let's just be clear with that. It's not for everyone. Actually, funny story. After the first or second year at Flying Saucer, we sent a personality test, Myers-Briggs, to everyone in the company. They had the option to do it or not. Everyone did it, and we had like 2 personality types over like 26.
Out of 16.
Yeah, 16. So that was pretty funny to see that we were all kind of the same, which can open to other questions as well, but still it was funny to see that it's the recruitment process was leading to similar results. So yeah, recruitment super important, and that's the first question I'm asking. What's your vision of the remote life? Do you think it's going to be pina colada on the beach, or do you have something a bit more serious in mind? Do you have already a setup to work correctly from home? Have you had experience or not? Because that will impact the next step, which is onboarding. Do you need a lot of help for onboarding, which is fine, but that will have an impact on how we manage things after that. Because it's a new world. Try to imagine you've never been working in a company remote. You get hired, and the first day you wake up at home, and here you are. That's your first day, and that's. So what do? Am I supposed to connect, not connect? What am I supposed to do? It's already very stressful when you have a regular in-house company, but for a remote company, it's even more challenging.
Yeah. So you mentioned personality tests as one thing, but I know you can't really choose or you can't really discover whether somebody's going to be an effective remote worker or not based on a personality test, right? So what do you look for to say, okay, this person is really going to be successful in a remote position?
Self-motivation. There is no one to check if you are on time or to check if you are working. The only person that's checking that is yourself. I mean, of course, we're going to see it, right? But self-motivation is, and that's why we can see it a bit in the personality test that we don't use for recruitment, by the way. But no, it's just, I want to make it clear, right? But it's self-motivation. Myself, as a founder, a CEO, I need to make clear why I'm waking up in the morning for, what I'm trying to achieve. And every team member has to have a clear vision of why they're waking up in the morning, and they have to be excited about it. I'm not saying every day is paradise, but you need to see the bigger plan, the bigger vision, the bigger goal for the company, and you have to be excited about it. And that's why it's also so important to be aligned in terms of value of what you're working for.
So I know I get to listen in on a lot of your calls, and I know there's a lot of different accents going on. And you started this company in New York.
Yeah.
And now we are 6 hours away from New York.
Yeah.
Your employees are based all over the world. Your clients are based all over the world. how do you deal with the time zone difference when so many other companies have crumbled because of it?
Yeah, indeed, a lot of different accents. We have people in South America, Central America, India, Eastern Europe, New Zealand, uh, Africa, everywhere. So a lot of different accents. And time zone is like everything. It can be a constraint. It can be also a strength. When we have a big rush, for a project, we can deliver so quickly. We can have, if necessary, a designer starting on the West Coast, someone in the East Coast finishing, and someone in Europe starting right away with the client feedback. So we can actually work 24-hour on 24-hour legally, right?
Right.
So that can be a strength as well. And also, we were talking about recruitment. I'm looking at profiles worldwide. I can hire people anywhere with different salary expectations, right? Depending of where you are at in your journey as a company. Also with different skills. A concrete example, we have a lot of startups trying to move from Europe, especially from France, to the States.
Right.
A lot of our writers are in Quebec, in Montreal, and they speak both, and they write with both language. Amazing skill to have. It's really hard to find that in a city in the States, if you want to hire locally. So it can be a strength, and of course it requires organization. So we have a map of people where they are at, what's time zone. Now with Slack it's very easy because they tell you what time it is in their country, for example.
Wow.
But very quickly in your team, you know who you're working with. You know what time is it for them. When do you need to send them stuff so they give you feedback and you wake up and magically you have all your feedback to treat. It's organization and making sure you know who you're working with and where they are at.
Do you feel like you or your team ever get lost in that process of trying to figure out, what time it is in what city and how you're gonna be able to coordinate with each other?
Again, onboarding. During recruitment, it rarely happens. Just because during the onboarding we go project by project. We don't just give you like 5 or 10 projects right away. So you get to learn to know the people. We spend time first meeting everyone to just hang out the same way you would hang out around a coffee in a new company, in-house company. So that's really important. So that kind of avoid the issue, and onboarding of the clients as well, right? Because everything can wait 24 hours, 48 hours. It's very rare that there is a request that really needs to be treated right away, right? Especially if your project is organized correctly. So it's and that has to be clear with the client, So it's not because you are online that you are available all the time. The same way, it's not because you have a phone that you're available all the time to answer on the phone, right? So that's about educating the team, the clients, onboarding them and telling them, when they can expect an answer. And yeah, it really doesn't generate issues.
So can you tell us a little bit more about the onboarding experience for you? First, starting with your own employees, how you bring them into the team.
Yeah. So the recruitment, we have a lot of different phases, a lot of different calls, short, where you're gonna meet a lot of people. Of course, the most senior people of the company because they have experience in that kind of lifestyle, but also new people, so that you can have an informal chat. Like we're having here around a coffee about the company, how it feels, the culture here. So a lot of different meetings. And when you get hired, we have a very strict or very defined onboarding process. The first days and weeks, we're gonna really hold your hand digitally, but hold your hand. So touching base every day, how you feel, how is it going, what are your questions, what are your doubts, mentally, how you feel as well. It's a stress, starting a new job is a stress. And then as you show results, as you reach your goals, we're gonna start to just give you more freedom and more freedom and more freedom until you're very free. Not really into micromanagement. So until you have a lot of freedom and you just come to us when you have a challenge, and you suggest solutions as well. So that's really the onboarding. We kind of help you hold hand at the beginning very closely, just step by step, more and more freedom until you're totally independent.
And what about onboarding your clients? What does that look like?
Yeah. So we have a very documented process as well for each type of client. Is it a retainer? Is it a fixed project, overnight projects we call them, or is it is it for a website, or is it for an app, or is it for branding or marketing strategy? Each type of client has a different onboarding, different needs, right? And we have documentation for that, checklist that the team needs to follow, and we're gonna educate. Part of this checklist is educate the client on the expectation, manage expectation for everyone, right? What's going to be the process, what's going to be the timeline, the roadmap, the different steps, what are the information we need from them. We provide templates, framework to get those information. So it's very clear. I mean, we try to make our client life the easiest again. We work mainly for startups. They don't have much time, so we need to make everything very simple, clear, and that's how we can also move fast.
And what kind of issues do you usually see come up when you onboard clients into remote work for the first time, if they've never worked with a remote agency?
It's pretty rare.
Okay.
And we don't see issues because we have this system. We at the beginning we had some issues because miscommunication of expectation. Oh, I thought you were doing this. No, we need you to do that actually. But now it's very clear. And during the sales process as well, it's clear already what's gonna happen. So they sign off that process, and they have time to get to know it and understand what's gonna happen. Again, it's really about transparency, clarity, and manage expectations.
So what were some of those early issues that you had when you first started the company with onboarding clients to remote work for the first time? And how did you develop strategies to start to avoid them or prevent them?
Well, I mean, miscommunication, and problem of managing expectation. People thinking we were doing things and us thinking they had the capacity or the skills to give us some information. So now we have an amazing tool. It took us almost a year to create, but it's a kind of internal Wikipedia. We call it the Knowledge Center.
Okay.
And every process is there. So when you are onboarded as well, you have everything. All the checklist, all the process, all the document, all the templates, how to push a blog post on our blog, how to get a freelancer in, how to change the project manager of a project, right? How to send the assets, the final assets of a website to the developers. Everything is there, and we keep updating it, right? Every time there is maybe the team is growing a lot, or every time we have a new idea of how to optimize it, feedback from client or the team, we keep updating it. So it's all there. It's kind of the golden document, the golden asset in the company, because you don't have to keep repeating yourself again and again. And if someone is not sure, they go back to it. And again, they don't need to ping someone on Slack, create an extra notification, and change, stop someone focus. So that's very important. Document everything.
And is this available for your clients or just for your employees?
Just for us. Yeah. Of course, we send some part of them to our client, but we have specific documentation for that. So it's even clearer. We don't want to, again, give them extra work.
Yeah. So you've already talked about a lot about mental health and how recruitment is such an important part of making sure that you can be successful as a healthy team. How do you organize yourselves to meet your goals as a remote team?
Yeah. I mean, you name the 3 pillars of making that organization or making that... So I think you named the 3 pillars of making a remote team successful and healthy and sane, right? It's, again, mental health, recruitment, and the third one is organization. And you can see how it's connected, right? Recruitment is the beginning of everything. mental health is kind of the base, the foundation of that. An organization is helping you just to stay sane, right? Because when everything is a mess and you have a fire for clients to take care of, you need things to be perfectly organized, right? So I just mentioned the knowledge center. That's really a big piece for us. Everything is there, and that saves a lot of time. But we have other kind of trick. I was mentioning Slack and notification. It's important to have a talk with your employee and with your team and your clients about synchronous versus asynchronous communication. So again, Slack allows to send a message, get an answer right away. But it's not because someone is connected that someone is available. And that's not obvious for everyone. And that can create a lot of miscommunication and frustration. If a client keeps sending you messages all day long about an issue, if you don't answer, they may be frustrated. But at the same time, you also have other stuff to take care of, and you cannot just switch every 5 minutes to answer them. So education about this is important. When am I gonna answer? At which pace? How to get feedback correctly. Maybe it's not Slack is not the best place. Maybe you take time to gather everything in a document. So that's very important to make the difference between being online and being available.
And what is synchronous versus asynchronous communication?
So synchronous is what we're doing right now, and asynchronous is you sending me your list of questions. I'm taking the time to think it through, to work on it, maybe to review with my team, consolidate it, and then I send you my complete answer. So it's two different steps with, it can be hours, days between the question and the answer, but very often it's much more efficient, right? Because you do not forget anything, you have time to think it through, and it's faster because you avoid mistakes. So we push to have 80-90% of our communication internally and with clients that's asynchronous.
Okay. So you said you want to have most of your communications be asynchronous, but how do you actually encourage that within your communications with your teammates and with your clients? Are you using emails? Are you telling them to what kind of structures are you using?
First, I'm very blunt and straightforward with my clients, and I encourage the project manager to be the same. Again, personality test, but basically we do not take feedback over Slack.
Okay.
You get lost, and maybe it's not the right time. The team is not always available to get feedback. We don't have the project open and everything, so that's the best way to get something lost or not handled correctly. Right. So we create tools for them, but it's simple. A Google Doc, feedback, round number 1 for this day, take your time to get all your feedback. Then maybe we set up a call to talk them through and consolidate them so it's clear, because what's clear in your mind, it's not necessarily clear for the team. And once that's clear for everyone, then we can treat them. It's much more clear. The process is clear. You avoid a lot of mistakes, you avoid a lot of back and forth, and when the process is clear and when the client is clear on what's going to be the process, everything is going much more smoothly. Again, managing expectations.
Right. So can you give me a concrete example of when you would use synchronous versus asynchronous communication? For example, let's say on Slack.
Yeah, so it's really tempting because Slack has the capacity to answer directly live, right? To communicate live. But for example, it's telling a client, oh, here is the first version of your website design. Here's a document where you can put all your feedback, and I will call you tomorrow. Let's chat tomorrow at that time to go over them, consolidate them before we get the creative team to tackle them, right? So it's not like, here's the design, what do you think? And then you have hours of this, but that, oh, I'm not sure, oh, so my friend Joe told me this, and this is just a nightmare, right? Yeah. For everyone, but it's not the client for either, because you're not giving them a framework to express their feedback correctly, they are not the one, you have to tell them. That's your job. So provide the assets, provide whatever delivery, and provide a system to get feedback, and that's clear and consolidated.
So it seems like you have all these systems really figured out over the years, all these systems of organization and communication. But how do you enforce that internally and make sure that your employees are really, living and working by these organizational standards?
Yeah, no, that's good. That's a good question, because that also comes down to, I got this feedback a lot from other companies, other CEO and founders, and just like scared, like, are they gonna work enough? Are they applying my process? Are they following my to-do list? And that comes down to recruitment, but also culture. And culture is a huge topic. When you create your company, you need, even if it doesn't feel like the priority, but you need to think about your culture and how you create a culture in your company between your teammates, even though it's a remote company. I would say especially if it's a remote company. You don't really have to give it some thought. If you want, I don't think it's a good idea, but if you have an in-house company, because people are there, the culture gonna be generated. Maybe it's not what you're expecting, but it's gonna be there happening, right? If it's remote, you have to give it some thoughts and you have to make it happen, because otherwise people working, turning off the computer, and there is nothing happening between people. And that's connected to mental health. It's not good. You need to feel supported, especially when you work from home. Otherwise you're isolated. And that's a huge concept to keep in mind. Remote doesn't mean being isolated. The same way you can be isolated in the middle of a group in the middle of New York City, right? You can be isolated even more easily as a remote worker. So that's why, again, that was the very big focus for us, culture in the company.
What were the most important considerations in creating this remote culture for Flying Saucer?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say it's a remote culture. I just say it's Flying Saucer culture, right? And that comes down, the culture is kind of dripping off your values, right? So we had a very clear set of values. We talked about it a bit earlier: freedom, self-development, happiness in the company from the beginning, and then you just find ways to bring that to life concretely. So you try to replace this coffee machine moments by some informal meetings, right? You try to make people talking about other things than work as well. You make sure people take time to know each other and to actually be interested in each other. Again, recruitment. You need to have people that they have empathy, and they are asking about how you're doing and not just jumping in all the time. But you also have to encourage that. So we take time on weekly basis to all chat all together, to take time, even if it's a crazy week, to talk about how it's going on, what's going on. And it's really interesting because, again, we have people everywhere in the world. So we don't really need to turn on the news, Like I have some people in Mexico telling me about what's happening there, people in Paris, people in New York, and we talk about our vision of what's happening and how it feels really inside. A sad but crazy thing that happened to us. One of our base designer, Mariana, she's in Mexico City, and as she was working, the last big earthquake happened. So we were actually on Slack, and she was like, guys, everything is moving right away. So that was crazy for everyone, especially for her. But of course, we just gave her a lot of time to be able to recover from that mental health, another pillar. Also to take time to go outside and help people, because they were it was required. They were needing a lot of help, and we were also asking a lot of information, and we're caring for her. So connecting on a human level is very important. I think if you want to have a happy team, you need to create a sense of belonging. So you need to have people caring for you, and you need to feel like you're joining a team every time you connect. So that's really important, and that's, I think, the foundation of creating a strong culture. Actually, little story, people during their holidays at Flying Saucer, they are traveling to meet their colleagues, their teammates in other countries. I'm very proud of that, because of course I'm not asking that at all. They just do it by themselves. I think it's amazing to go to meet your teammate from work while you're off. It's awesome, and it creates such a rich experience, and they're so happy to meet. And we got this picture in the Slack of people meeting, and it's it's really good. It feels really good.
It's beautiful. So speaking of culture, I personally am very interested. I've witnessed you go through your own transitions in your own let's say experimentation with your relationship with your work, how you take that home, how you work from home, and the culture that you have with other employees, but also with your friends and family. Can you talk a little bit about the problems that you've experienced with family life in
you want to get me into
in relation to remote work, and also how you've overcome those problems over the years?
Yeah, I mean, the top one that comes to my mind is but you're not really working because you're working from home.
Yeah.
I think that's something recurring, and especially when you're working really hard, it's sometimes a bit hard to hear. Because you're actually working, even if you stay home. It's even harder because you have to be working. You cannot pretend that just going to the office was like work, which happened in a lot of companies I've been working. I mean, let's face it, we will spend hours being there, not necessarily working, right? And also that, if you organize correctly, that can be amazing. Like here, I start pretty late in the morning because in France, because the clients, most of them are in the States, so I have time to enjoy my freedom and go in the mountains, do paragliding and climbing, and then I'm back to work and I finish later in the day. So people, especially with social media, they may say, "Oh, what is he doing? He's just like living the life." But I'm also finishing my days around like 11 p.m. midnight and having a lot of meetings, and so that's, you need to manage that and the vision from the outside world, but it's really worth it.
Yeah. So as a remote worker, you work from your apartment.
Yeah.
Your office,
yeah.
Right here in our lovely apartment, and but even though you have a dedicated room that's for you and your work, you're still right next to the kitchen. You've got the cat coming in and out. You got me and the baby making all of our kind of chaos. How do you kind of separate from yourself and not have like FOMO when I'm not working, of saying like, man, she's over there watching TV and I'm in here doing client work? How do you deal with that?
I mean, that's the thing, everyone has to deal with that, right? You can be at work and looking at the beautiful sky and feeling like you're missing out. I think it's something everyone has to deal with, but I think here it's again about, my personal answer is to be aligned between what's work and what's life. Work is not a prison for us. I think, or at least for me, but it's not a prison, and I'm excited to join the team every day, really, and sometimes I cannot go climbing or I cannot go paragliding, but I'm having fun with them. I'm not saying every day is fun, but I'm proud of what we do, and I'm proud of what we're achieving right now, and that's one of the reasons we also made this big move last year of only working for impact companies, positive impact projects, because we want to be totally align between our life, what we're trying to achieve on a personal level in our life, and what we're trying to achieve with the company. And that's how also you create the culture, because there is room in the team to talk about the how you bring those values to life. Maybe the way you recycle stuff, maybe the way you educating your children, maybe the way you are growing your own plants and vegetables, and the way that's aligned with the type of client we're having, because we're having this conversation with our client as well, because they are positive impact clients. So the fact that everything is aligned like this helps a lot, because you're not feeling like you're going against the flow and against your own flow when you start working, when you start your day.
So I don't know if you've seen there's a famous video of this guy being interviewed. He's an expert on something. He's being interviewed on the news, and he's at home in his home office, and he's on national television, and during the interview, his 2-year-old son comes walking in the door. The wife is on all fours trying to drag the baby out the door. So it seems like, as much as the team needs to be onboarded, you need to make your own kind of adjustments and organizations. There's also kind of the family that has to be trained for remote work as well. What kind of advice would you give to other kind of aspiring remote workers on how to handle that sensitively?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, this video, everyone loved it, right? And that shows how I think the world is also ready to be a bit more human, to understand that, okay, there is a professional with a title, but that's a person. And people want more and more to connect on a personal level, not only a professional level. You don't want a robot in front of you, right? So I think that was a really nice video for that, to show that everyone loved this guy, right? Not for what he was saying. It was probably, I don't even remember what he was saying, but we remember him by being a human, a human being. But that my answer is really coming back to the beginning of boundaries. This is that office. This is work, and that's the same way you will never come in someone's office any time of the day for any reason. We cannot come in the office space any time of the day for any reason, right? And I think that's just to set up the rules and set up the boundaries and define them, and keeping flexibility. And I think that's a challenge as well as a remote company in remote life. Things change. I mean, the baby's coming, that will change things, if you, depending on the workload, especially in a creative agency, depending on the workload, you can be more or less flexible. You can start later, finish later or sooner. You can work maybe this week 3 days, and then next week you're going to need to do maybe an extra half day, maybe push something in the weekend. But again, flexibility in the team. If someone in the team needs to take a medical appointment in the morning, they don't even need to tell me. They keep posted the people in the team. I'll be connected at that time, and as long as it doesn't impact the goals you define together and the deadline, what's a big deal? So that's very important, flexibility and trust. I think if we need to take all the pillars that we mentioned today and put them in a title, all of it, it's trust. Because if you have the right people from recruitment, if you create a place where they can grow, stay healthy and sane, right? And if you onboard them correctly, giving them the right guidelines and then freedom, what you really generate is trust. And if there is trust in the company between employees, everything's gonna be all right.
So I'm not even a remote worker, and even I've seen all these articles everywhere about how to effectively work remote during the COVID stuff. So right now it's a hot topic. There's a lot of people talking about it, but it doesn't seem like any of the advice that's being given out is that specific, or that original. It's a lot of like, you know, make sure you get dressed in the morning and don't sit on your
Eat.
couch all day.
Don't forget to eat.
Don't forget to eat. But what kind of real like practical tools can you recommend for people to start their remote practice?
Yeah, I think all these advices are really good. You know, very concrete, down to earth.
So it's not just cliche. Those are actual important things.
I days I forgot to eat, and I know in my team it happened as well. Some really big weeks we actually, in communication, set up in the calendar time for lunch, and you know you have to take it to force it. And because the team is so close, there will be like, if you send a message during that time, you will probably receive a message from someone saying, "Go to get lunch," you know, "What are you doing here?" You know, so that happens, you know. So just dress up and, you know, take care of yourself, mental health. You know, you feel good if you dress well, even if it's from home. I mean, I have meetings. I take a jacket on. It's good, you know. It's important. It's for yourself and for the others. So all this advice that apply, you know, the workspace, to have something good for your back, the chair, everything. But that has to be on top of what we talked before. You know, the foundational aspect, the different pillars. But for Flying Saucer, I mean, I can list a little bit the different tools we're using, and we keep it simple. Our work right now is more to remove tools rather than add tools. Because if your process works, if your process is clear and set up, it doesn't really matter if you use Asana, not Asana, Google Sheet or something, you know. You should not expect the tools to make the work for you, right? We actually do not have a project management tool. Because, like Asana, for example. Okay. Because project manager are managing the project. Right? So I'm not asking the creative to manage the projects, which is, in that case, they would use Asana to make it easier. But the project manager, it's their job. And they don't use Asana, you know. Some of them may use Trello or Google Sheet or some Notes or whatever. They have their own system, you know. But we use mainly Google Sheet, Google Doc, I mean the Google Suite in general, you know, just to be collaborative. Even presentation in general in Google Slides, so people can give feedback. That's the most important for us. The easiness of giving feedback and treating them, right? So Google Doc, Google Sheet, Google Slide, Slack, we mentioned it, but with a lot of guidelines and rules, not to go crazy, very important. Almost no emails. It's very rare. Very rare. What else we use? Trello. I think for team, we were talking about asynchronous. Trello is great for that, because if you have a developer pushing a website, you have the different step. You can see where he is at, and you don't need to bother him, right? So that's a good tool. Also for content creation, you can see the different step of the process, and you don't need to bother anyone. And that's pretty much it, right?
Well, great. I think that's it.
That's it?
Yeah. Thanks for letting me help out with this podcast. It's been fun.
Oh, that's perfect. that was really helpful.
Good.
Well, that's it. That was the first episode of Brace for Impact. Thank you so much for watching us and hearing us. We're going to be coming back soon with a new podcast about impact and why we choose to focus on positive impact clients in the agency. I'll be joined by other entrepreneurs and CEOs to talk about it. In the meantime, stay safe and share our podcast. Bye-bye.